"Look, Tommy, we're going to take you to your grandma's," Detective Palmer began to say, but Tommy cut him off. "I know who did it." "Huh?" Detective Palmer stopped halfway to his car and turned around to face the boy, who followed close behind with his chin buried in the collar of his coat, shielding it from the cold night air. "I know who killed Mom, and I know who killed Dad, too." Palmer hesitated to reply. He expected utter silence from the kid for the entire car ride to Grandma's. He walked over and knelt down before him and held his shoulders. He took a breath as if to say something, but the words stifled in his throat. What he finally managed to say sounded natural and ritual. "Look, Tommy, the other officers and I are here to help, and your grandma loves you very much and is worried about you. So we want to make sure that you get to her safely. You can't help anything when they're already dead," Tommy said coldly. "I could have helped them, but I didn't do anything to stop it. It's my fault." "No? Yes, my fault. I want to go to Grandma's now." Palmer didn't hesitate to comply. He escorted the boy to the car and secured him in the back seat. Then he turned around and looked at the house. He thought about Detective Rolland and Collins, who were down in the basement, dusting for fingerprints, and would remain there for a good length of the night. Palmer was glad he was given the task of taking care of the boy instead of crime scene duty. The thought of Tommy's dead parents still lingered in his mind. It was the way the father's eyes had looked. They were unusually dark as a stormy sky on a moonless night, and there were streaks of blood below the eyes. Rolland claimed the guy must have shot himself in the head, but they never found a gun. Palmer didn't care how the guy died. He just didn't like being in that basement. The road back to town snaked through lurching elm trees. On a moonless night, such as that one, driving the long road from Tommy's house was like driving through a cave. The headlights cut through the dark like a drawing blade. "Dad was really upset, you know." The small boy voice startled Palmer. He glanced behind at the boy. The whites in his eyes shone faintly like ghosts in the darkness. "Are you sure you want to talk about it?" Palmer asked. "You hide things, Mr. Palmer. I don't understand, Tommy. Your mind is dark." Palmer didn't reply. He kept his eyes on the road and steered left as the road veered that way, tapping the brakes as he did. "Why did you slow down?" "Because I want to be careful. I can't see very well in the dark." "Because you're afraid of hitting what might be in front of you." "Yes." Palmer glanced in the rearview mirror. Tommy's eyes seemed to be brighter. He looked away and blinked, then looked back in the mirror and noticed that the boy's eyes were normal again, just the slight gleam in the whites of his eyes from the glow of the digital clock display below the dashboard. "I know what that feels like," Tommy said gravely. "Do you?" Palmer roused a bit. "Tell me what that's like, Tommy." "When my dad was alive, I would sometimes look in his mind. It was a dark place there, but I could see it." "Oh yeah? And how's that?" "I have a light." "A light, huh? So kind of like a flashlight." Yeah, exactly," Tommy enthused. "What kind of things would you see in your dad's mind, Tommy?" "I don't know, a lot of things. They weren't always easy to see. He would try to hide them in the dark most of the time, make them hard to see. I would only see them for a short while, and then they'd run away." "Were they scared?" "No, I don't think so, well, yeah, maybe they were scared." "What did they look like?" "They were hard to see most of the time. Very blurry, kind of like raindrops on a windshield, you know? Until suddenly you'd get very close." Tommy quieted, and Palmer didn't like the sound of the silence. He turned around and saw the stark terror flooding from the boy's enormous round eyes. He faced the oncoming road. A blurry image materialized in the distant pale light. Once Palmer realized it was a large deer, it was too late. The car slammed into the deer and swerved out of control. The tire screeched as the car veered off the road and came to a head-on collision with a tree. Tommy stood nearby, crying while Palmer inspected the damage. One headlight smashed and the front of the car is hugging the tree like a lover. I'll be damned if it will start, Palmer mumbled to himself, walking about the front of the car. Palmer returned to Tommy, who stood near the edge of the road, gazing at the crumpled dead deer. We won't be going anywhere. I'll alert dispatch, Tommy. Someone will be here to pick you up. Palmer leaned into the car and took the CB handset. Dispatch, this is Delta 122, he said into the speaker. I'm involved in a TA on the County Line Road, requesting a tow truck, crime lab, and a supervisor to verify. There are no injuries. Repeat, no injuries. Over. The female voice cut through the static. Affirmative, Delta 122, this is dispatch. Tow truck, crime lab, and supervisor en route. Over. Palmer tossed the handset back in the car and sighed as he bowed his head, distressed and exhausted. Tommy suddenly burst out shouting. Dad told me lights out, and I didn't listen to him. What? Palmer wheeled around to see the boy trembling as he stood there. The gloom concealed his face. He told me that if I ever came prying in his mind again with that light of mine, he'd make sure I never saw the light of day again. Do you want to talk about it, Tommy? It will be a few minutes before the others get here. You can tell me about it. The silence grew heavier, and then Tommy began to speak. Dad was standing in my room one night. I woke up 'cause I heard the floor creak. It was dark. I couldn't see him very good, but he was there. My dad's big. He was like a giant shadow standing over my bed. I didn't know what to say to him. I didn't expect to see him. So I just asked him why he wasn't asleep. I told you lights out, boy. Now why didn't you turn them off? He yelled at me. At first I didn't know what he meant. I thought he was talking about my bedroom light. But it was off. I didn't know he was talking about my... Tommy gasped. Palmer felt a chill run through him. No, I'm talking about that little mind of yours prying in mine. My dad leaned down and grabbed my face. It hurt bad because he squeezed my cheeks together. Then he said, if I catch that little light of yours prying in my mind again, I'll make sure you never see the light of day again. Did your dad leave after that? Palmer said. Yeah. Did your dad do anything? Tommy nodded. Palmer could hear the boy sniffle, on the verge of choking up. He banged on the door really hard, kind of like the big bad wolf, you know? Tommy cried. Yeah, I know, Palmer said. A long moment of silence passed between them. The boy continued sniffling, fighting with his emotions. Off in the distance, coyotes cried along with him, their incessant yelping rising in the night. What's that? Tommy roused with dread. It's just coyotes. I'm sure the tow truck and other detectives will be here any minute. Palmer remained standing near the wrecked car, arms folded. Tommy sat down in the gravel a few feet away. Why are they crying? I don't know, Palmer said. He didn't want to mention that they might be defending a kill. Seemed too morbid in the current circumstance. When I was a kid, I thought it was because they couldn't find the moon, so they cried out to it. I don't like the sound of it, Tommy said. It sounds like they're laughing. Don't worry, you're safe with me, Tommy. Moments later, the coyotes quieted down. An owl hooted softly. Are you a bad man? No, Tommy, I'm a detective. We're the good guys. Your mind is dark. You try to hide things, like my father did. The boy had his head down when he spoke, buried in the collar of his coat. Palmer watched the boy, contemplating an answer to his comment. When the boy raised his head up and looked at him, Palmer flinched and stepped back. Tommy's eyes were shining. "Do you see my light?" Palmer felt dizzy. His heart began to pound. He couldn't believe what he saw. Tommy's eyes shone like 2 full moons. "They're my headlights, Mr. Palmer. Like your car, only one of mine isn't broken." "Yeah. How do you—" Palmer couldn't form words. He was so stunned he felt he might collapse right there on the side of the road. "Why don't you believe, Mr. Palmer? I can see." "What do you see?" Palmer said, out of breath. "I see them hiding in you, too." Tommy's eyes brightened. It looked as if an angel appeared, illuminating the entire road. Palmer stumbled back into the car. His mouth hung open in an expression of awe. "What are they, Tommy? Tell me, what do you see?" It's hurt. No!" Tommy screamed. The brightness of his eyes faded. What? What happened, Tommy?" "Darkness! It's coming!" "Then get out, Tommy!" The boy thrashed from side to side. The light beaming from his eyes flickered. Strangely, Palmer could no longer hear Tommy's screams. The boy's squealing voice began to echo within the confines of Palmer's mind. It sounded as if the boy's exclamations resounded from deep within a well. "Palmer! Palmer, help! I can't see! I can't see!" Palmer tried to cry out to Tommy, but couldn't. He felt smothered, as if his throat was filling with water. "Make it stop! It's grabbing me!" Palmer collapsed to the ground as the most horrendous scream exploded in his head. He writhed on the ground, hands clasped over his ears, mouth opening and closing like a stunned fish out of water. 2 round spheres of white light appeared in the road, hovering above the crumpled corpse of the deer. Palmer's gaze locked onto the spheres of light. Now he was like the animal, frozen in the killing zone. The orbs of light descended upon him, brightening. It might have been sheer panic that broke the stifling strain in Palmer's voice. He bellowed one last guttural scream. Then it was lights out. Detective Jackson shone his flashlight on Palmer's body. It was found lying next to the wrecked cruiser, arms and legs outstretched, as if the man had died making a snow angel. Most unnerving of all was the sight of blood seeping from Palmer's eyes and ears. The tow truck was parked on the other side of the road, engine idling. A police cruiser was parked in front of it, red lights flashing. "Where's the boy?" Jackson said, turning to Sergeant West, who stood nearby, hands on his hips. "I don't know, but that's what we better find out." High-pitched, maniacal laughter broke out somewhere deep within the woods behind them. "What the hell's that?" Jackson and Sergeant West turned around and stumbled backwards, awestruck, as an enormous orb of white light ignited in the woods and blazed over the treetops.